لله رب العالمين. Assalamu alaikum. Today is going to be an open discussion, not a lecture kind of session here. We previously were talking to the young men about Hadith Nabi Salam. Allah loves that if one of you performs a job, a deed, a work, to master it. And of course, this hadith can be read and implemented in context. And in this session, we are on. We're going to discuss some social values and social, social risk controlling factors in a form of questions. So we are going into a dialogue, kind of open-ended or curiosity motivating questions in order for us to enjoy our time, of course. Maybe we can learn from each other. And also we can develop a skill. We can develop a model. And maybe through our discussion, we can address things together that may turn and give birth to good ideas of the communities, whether individually to us or maybe someone might take something and take it as a lead for the community. Now, as I love to say and love to state that anything that's good to the individual, to the universe, to planet Earth, you will find Islam taking the lead in such things. So everything for us as a Muslim, we turn that to a benefit and an opportunity for improvement in this life with our good intentions, inshallah, with our tawheed, inshallah, it becomes a good deed for us. So this hadith, in light of this hadith that says, Allah yuhibbu idha 'amila ahadukum 'amalan yutqan. Now, of course, mastery needs knowledge. And it needs also expertise. This assumes that societies should have resources. Why? Because this knowledge, this knowledge or mastery should have a certain reference, for example, should have standards, should have maybe regulations, should have someone who's an expert in this field and passing down this information, this expertise to the next generation. Now, how can we do this? How can we make sure that our societies, our families maybe, are sustaining that element of resource, of expertise and knowledge, which helps in continuation of preserving a certain job, for example, that's in the family. For example, succession plans, resources that were dependent on the job, not to create a generation which copy-pastes only, clone the job without knowing the root behind certain standards, for example, right? So how can we do this? That's the first question. How can we do this without being stringent, without making the professional job something that's it's like a religion, that cannot be changed, that cannot be flexible? How can we challenge this at the same time having resources that are considered, like I said, they are resources. We revert back to them as being governance for this job. That's question number one. Also, if we consider mastery as a value, if we put mastery as a value in the society, how will that affect the way we utilize our children going to school? For example, when they go to school, they get the information and they get these homeworks and exams and stuff like that. If we put mastery as a value, as a standalone value, for example, if this addresses skill, not only knowledge and memorization, it addresses skill, how would that element change or transform or add to the plan we have to our children? What will it chip inside their minds? Right? That's question number 2. Will it affect something? Will it only wire up our brains and make us convey us to our children? Listen, whatever you learn, for example, let's have a trial on implementing that practically somewhere. How about that? And we know that, subhanAllah, one of the things someone, alhamdulillah, by the grace of Allah, this person I saw this week, I think once somewhere, he said that, there's a ilm that's called ilm al-qira'at in the Quran. So you read the verse like this, you can read it like this, you can say wal-duha, wal-duhi, wal-duha, it's all right. And this theory assumes that one of the reasons why the students of this knowledge are present, the knowledge is present, is that the knowledge is practical. It's a practical knowledge. You understand me? So it's the knowledge that you implement. So the practical sense of certain knowledge areas helps in grounding them and preserving it. You understand me? It's different. They say when you have more senses involved in information, it's more grounding and preserving that information. So that's number 2. Very strange question, but it's something that you might have noticed practically. One will not be explicit with this question I'm going to give right now, this assumption, but it might be implicit in some cases. Where is there such a, without criticizing, let's be objective with that question, is there such a role or a condition where mastery is out of context? For example, is there such a thing where someone is merely a commander of people, or merely someone who's sitting down, really his image is so powerful that he does not need to master anything? Does such thing exist in society? Why am I asking that? Because I'm sure, guys, that there is this controversial kind of matter where you find some people abstaining away from mastering some things, and maybe they have an argument. They say, maybe I know things bil-fatra, I know things by naturally, no need for me to open books. I have sense. Some people say that. Now, without needing to criticize them as personalities, but do you build societies on that? Meaning that, do you need to distinct between when I build a society, when I'm addressing objects, curriculums, standards, I don't build the society on that, and that does not go against some people might be different. But does that person is out of the context of being in that system? You guys understand what I mean? Does he need to go through the process or not? That's another question. Or is that only for, I don't know, anyways, just skip that. All right, so this is the question. This is the third question I have. 1, 2, 3. Number 4. Does mastery limit creativity, or does it direct it somewhere? So, for example, if you master a certain job and you're so accurate and consistent, and you became like the governor of the job, yeah? Does that limit creativity in that area, or does it direct it? So the creativity is directed in that area, and instead of creativity being like an open hose of water that's spilling water all over the place, it's directed somewhere and it's preserved for that area. That's another question. Right. Very important question also that it's a bit long here. Do we feel that we have a threat to the concept of mastery in our time? Is it the gap for losing something called discipline? Is it the gap for opening addiction problems in society because there is no mastery and there is no time spent, for example, even in the weekends, by the way, not assuming that we should be some, addicted to jobs also, but I mean that not feeling that there is value in my free time that I can spend on mastering the job that I'm doing. So I do the routine over and over and over, and I treat that as something that's valuable. It's not boring for me. It's contributing to some value that I have, a societal value, a collective value to society. Is there a gap, or is there a missing out on the concept of mastery that's causing misbehavior maybe in some areas, violence in societies, not to mention also crime and stuff like that? Is it a source of envy, meaning that because I'm not mastering anything, now I'm vulnerable. Why am I vulnerable? Because I don't feel that I have value. I feel that I'm valueless, if that's linguistically right to pronounce or say. So it devalues me. I have nothing. When I see other people that are mastering something, at least they have the concept of defining oneself for the job, and I don't have it. So does that make me vulnerable for depression, for comparison, for envy? Does it mean that mastering jobs mitigates the risk of envy in societies? Because I feel that I have value and I'm so busy with myself and improving myself that I don't have time even to compare myself to Mr. Radayli. I don't have time. If I give 1% of my time and effort to compare myself to them, then I'll be losing on I'm not utilizing my skill, for example, or my time. I'd rather invest in that, and I should not care about what he has and does not have. So is it a cure? Is the root cause, if we assume that there's the problem of not having the value of mastery built in within someone, does it assume that the reason for that might be that there's not much gratitude and appreciation of life? Maybe someone, and they say this, for example, as a proverb, يعني in Arabic, يعني ما تعب على الشيء ما بيسوي له قيمة. And this guy did not give effort in developing this thing like his father, like his ancestors, so he's not going to appreciate it because he was not the one who made effort in this. Is this a rule of thumb? I don't know. But the thing is, what comes first? Does being ungrateful and unappreciating life and what life is all about, and the sustaining of the wealth that you might have in society, does this bring up the problem or the issue of not valuing mastery and not preserving it? That's also a question. Is mastery and being professional at work, is it a key to wisdom? Is wisdom gained by mastering certain job or a certain skill or profession, for the fact that if you master something, it assumes, wallahu a'lam, that things are within a certain pattern. Things have pattern. When things have pattern and have a flow and have laws also, certain professions might have a certain, if you want to do this, do it this way. It assumes that. It assumes that things are not random. It opposes the idea of randomness. So, does this have to do with wisdom? When you feel like with knowledge also, that might be a reason also why someone might have knowledge but he is weak in his wisdom. So he has the knowledge, he has, let me say, the water, but the water is not preserved in a pot or in a glass. It's just pouring all over. Maybe so, by the way. So maybe mastery gives the privilege of having wisdom, being wise and being able to put knowledge within a certain scale that is always, in balance. So will this assume that wisdom is real and true as much as knowledge is real and true? So you need knowledge and you need wisdom. said, so it assumes that things are done in a certain way and technique. Notice how there is a link between people mastering their jobs and being efficient, let me say, with the job that they're doing and effective enough, and between the economy. So when you have a good economy, or you have a bunch of people who are society who are caring about mastering their jobs, it reflects in the economy. Why? Because it may assume that for example, in case of laboring and recruiting people, they're being utilized and aligned with the resource, for example, salaries and money. So things are being flowing and aligned in the right way. So it has an economic impact. Now, notice how. This is an economic concept, at least to my idea. I don't know professionally is it economic or no, but I'm speaking about the economy in a holistic sense and in a custom kind of definition. Notice how these things, guys, are interrelated with religious advices. Not to distinct even economy and mastery in jobs and professions with faith. So Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, when he says, for example, Inna Allah yuhib إذا عمل أحدكم عملا يتقنه, Allah loves that if you perform a job, you perform with mastery, it has a beneficial economic effect. Because it helps in utilizing the human resource in the right way. So I'm not spending money, for example, on employees who are inefficient, not masterful. So I'm preserving my economy with this hadith. So the barakah of this religion is enormous, is something that's unlimited. What if we connected people, including the slave who's talking to you right now, we all connect the concept of mastery and professionalism to our faith? What if that happened? What if I am being professional at my job because my faith tells me that? How will that give a boost to society? How will that impact society? How will that preserve society from misunderstanding maybe religion in some sense? Or maybe sometimes abusing sometimes in ignorant way or wicked way. I don't know. Because you're a person who is really a positive factor in society. So religious Islam makes you someone who is a positive impact in society. You're a good citizen because you're a Muslim. Understand? Your belief system tells you that. You're not a waste. You're a good person. Everyone benefits from you, like the tree that gives fruits, for example, and it has a shade at the same time, as long as you're nurturing yourself. So, if mastery is balanced with knowledge, what is the result? Meaning that, some people may be leaning towards being experts more and skillful more, and some people are maybe leaning towards being theoretical and being, knowledgeable more. So maybe this line of mastery in terms of skills, maybe it goes more into the expertise kind of line in my company, in my organization, and I have another line which has to do with consultancy and advice. So notice how these things create pairs of people. You might find someone, subhanAllah, who might be a leader. His leadership is coming from where he has the knowledge and has the performance also. We have both together. So for example, he has the knowledge of, accounting, for example, and he's practically a good accountant, so he becomes a leader in that field. But some people, subhanAllah, are more academic maybe. So we use these academic people because they might be masters also in the concepts and definitions, and you have the person who's a performer, then they pair together, they both lead each other. And also, guys, something I noticed that I think we need also to utilize some other concept of leadership, where now we can perceive leadership as something that's being a gift from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Some people, subhanAllah, are naturally from God attractive, and by the way, a very important caveat, being attractive not necessarily means that you're a good person. You can be attractive and you're a bad influence. And you can be attractive and you're a good influence. So it's a package, that you need to utilize in a good way. So there are people who are bad leaders. They are leaders, but they're bad leaders. They lead their societies, their friends, their families into a bad. يعني Allah says about Fir'aun, وَجَعَلْنَاهُمْ أَئِمَّةً يَدْعُونَ إِلَى النَّارِ. So they're leaders calling for fire and hellfire. They're calling for the hellfire with their skills. And there are some good leaders where they're utilizing this gift they have. They call it charisma. I don't know if the right word or no in the religious context. But anyway, whatever it is, they're attractive. They're using that beauty, that gift Allah gave them to attract people to the good. So it has nothing to do. I'm saying that to be careful of the concept of bad manipulation from some people who use these gifts in societies, or people who do not know that these gifts, by the way, does not mean that always someone is in the right path. Anyways, if that's said, then what I was going to say something about leadership. I forgot what to say.
Mastery and knowledge.
Mastery, and did I say that?
Knowledge. The practical experience and the theoretical. If you have both of them together, then
exactly. So it creates a pair between people and I wanted to say something. Went away. Anyways, let me give the last message here. It is about if we take professions as a message. I remember I read in one book, despite the phrase or the description that this person gave, but it tells you something about the connection of these professions to the messages of Allah Azza wa Jal. Meaning that if you have a profession, maybe subhanAllah, that I personally had this when I started working. It was so difficult for me to indulge, for example, in work. For example, knowing that I'm missing out on some religious practices. I had this dispute inside me, right? But it might be hawa also, it might be desire, by the way. Sometimes desire does that, and you think shaitan comes into that. He uses your passion, your empathy, your interest in religion, and tries to create an imbalance in it. Because now the duty is the job. The duty is not to go and do some extra things which Allah did not ask you for right now. It's not the obligatory prayer. So, anyways, the thing is, there's a doctor. There's a book I read. It was like a conversation between a Muslim guy and people from the Christians, I think. And one of them was a doctor. I think he was a brain surgeon, something like that. He said that we see God every day. He means that through my practical experience in surgeries, I see how God acts. I see God's laws, for example, in medicine. I see that in my own eyes. So being a professional, by the way, it gives you that access. You know why? Because wisdom and randomness are not friends. Wisdom and randomness are not friends. You see, things are not random. Things have patterns. Things have, even physics, that has laws. That's one fundamental concept of having a constructive kind of approach for knowledge. There is a certain structure. Now, how strong the structure should be, how stringent, whatever it is, but structure is there in this world. Professional work exposes you to that. It shows you that. You are forced somehow. I want to be more subtle with my language, but this is the word I got. You're forced into something called structure. You cannot survive without structure. You cannot. Now, don't tell me that because of this structure mindset, we are doomed in our company because they do not support creativity. That's not my problem, and that might be someone who's being overwhelmed with structure. But structure is there. With no structure, there is no order. With no structure, there is no preservedness. The concept of preservedness have an element of structure. So you need structure. And structure, by the way, preserves the concept of wisdom. It does support the concept of the existence of a creator who has wisdom, subhanahu wa ta'ala. Matter of fact, one of his names is Hakim, the all wise. He's wise like that. You understand me? So these patterns in our professional job gives us this access, and maybe subhanAllah, one of the reasons, one of the wisdoms of having jobs in this life is that it gives you some sort of beauty in preserving, in perceiving the Creator's acts. So you see the Creator's acts through these professional jobs. So if you are a Muslim and you have a belief and you know you're not living your life for no reason, then that faith of yours helps you turn this profession into a message. And you'll find some texts in the Quran and the Hadith that will help you do that. Though the Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, the Prophet Muhammad Sallallahu not necessarily that he's going to speak about details of professions, but he might give you a sign that no one but a prophet knows about certain things. No one but a prophet knows, for example, this medical fact. Then, because you know medicine, you read this text and find that, wait a minute, it does not go against what I know. That's number one. But it's speaking about something that I don't know. Notice how it's somewhere in the middle. That's why, I know we went off track. We'll come back to our questions. I want to hear your answers. That's the purpose of of having a discussion. One of the Muslim scholars, say, I think it's in Arabia, says that the prophets, the Anbiya, لم يأتوا بمحالات, and they did not come with things that are impossible. They came with maharat al-uqul, things that you are wondering about, that you don't know about. They are not impossible. They do not contradict intellect. They don't contradict intellect. But intellect cannot go beyond to be able to grasp this information. So they speak to you in a form, might be in a sign. Then it's your job, then it becomes a miracle action. It becomes a new information. Why? Because the access that these prophets speak from is not an access that me and you have. That's what makes them prophets. And just to end this, a person with knowledge, with expertise in the area of wahy, the Quran and the Hadith, can let you know what are the thin lines between not going beyond, interpreting the text in a way that can go a bit astray, and balancing that with certain fundamentals that you can utilize this information. So you get this hadith, for example, you read this verse in the Quran that has to do with the sun orbiting or the earth orbiting. Now, a certain idea comes into your mind that, wait a minute, does this say, for example, that such and such happens in the universe? I don't have much, this knowledge in astronomy or whatever it is. So I go ask a person who's an expert in that field, and I go ask a alim also in the religion. I ask him this, and I get this hadith. Before I interpret the way I desire or I think so, just give me the keys, the control factors in understanding this text, so I can understand how to utilize this into my profession. So one of the good ways just to end this, when you read the Quran, read the Sunnah, open your eyes and your hearts into how can I benefit from the Quran and the Sunnah and the events that happen to the prophets. Of course, we were talking about Prophet Yusuf in Surah Yusuf and his story, so you can get from his story benefits in your career. Utilize whatever happened, the events that happened to him. For example, just a small hint, how can you utilize the event that happened between the king and the Prophet? He had told him, we have enabled you today. You are enabled today. So if you're going to interpret the part that's not stated, that the implicit part, that it's like the king is telling him, ask me, where do you want me to put you for position? He's assuming that. Isn't that true? So the answer from Yusuf was, how can you benefit from that as someone who's, for example, having an interview tomorrow? If you're having an interview, So this dialogue that happened between the king and the prophet, so this is the Quran. You take the lessons from the Quran in trying to take the advice from the Almighty subhanahu wa ta'ala and implement that in a good way. And no one can do that, for example, like someone who's skillful in interviewing, for example. So you go and you take the bit of knowledge there and you try to understand from an HR expert, for example, this dialogue that happened between the king and Yusuf. In your perspective as someone in the HR, how do you read that? How do you read that? Without going into interpreting the meanings that are, for example, that are explicit only for the ulama, scholars of religion, of course. But you take some kind of utilization. You take the wisdom. Because these events have an element of wisdom. They do have. You understand me? So that will be done by who? Someone who's an expert. This is how, guys, this is how professional work is important. And I gave an example before of this, that a faqih, person who knows the halal and haram, is not an expert in medicine. He might tell someone, if you're sick enough, you're eligible not to fast this Ramadan. Where does the witness come from? You must go to the doctor. The doctor assesses that condition. Because he's an expert, the faqih says that, okay, I don't know about this condition, but does this harm you when you're fasting? He says, yeah. Who told you? The doctor. Is he a credible doctor? Yes. I give you the fatwa. Notice? So it humbles people down. It humbles the scholar down also. It humbles the religious person down, religious leader down. Why? He needs that expert. So we're collectively all creating this environment together. We are all collectively needing each other. Even the religion itself, by the way. The one who's a good reciter of Quran might not know the meaning of the verse, by the way. Someone who's in fiqh needs someone who's good in the hadith, because he might, the element where he extracts the knowledge from, hadith sahih or no, who can tell him that? Someone who's an expert in hadith. You understand me, guys? So these things are all interrelated. So let's go to our question right here. Let's take our first victim. Let's take our first customer. All right. How can we master or let me say support the concept of mastery without being stringent to the laws and the techniques that are there? The techniques might change, might be adaptable to some other environment. I don't know. What do you think?
It's quite complex to start with, but I was making notes while you were saying. So your multiple questions you asked about how to protect the profession, how can we put mastery as a value. Mastery can be out of context in today's age. The limits of the creativity with mastery. So broadly, I'll just summarize what I could observe or understand from this, and it was very interesting for me because as a threat, firstly, there is a huge threat towards mastery in today's day and age. Just as a simple example, in my profession, I'm an accountant, all right? So my father was an accountant, my grandfather was an accountant. So it's third generation. So this example, 3 generations back, it was very simple accounting. It was just taking money, giving money, addition, subtraction. That's it, and maintaining it.
Yes.
Okay. Then when it comes to my father's level, of course, then it was a little more professional, managing bigger accounts, bigger companies, right? Now at our level today, especially in the last 5 years, the change we have seen in accounting is incredible. We are implementing automated solutions and AI-based solutions for our customers. So what happens over here? What I felt personally is that I'm losing the touch of accounting. So when I first did my assignment, when I first started working with my father, at that time, how did I learn debit, credit? I took a general ledger, which is a book, wrote in that, and we created the accounts from that. Same thing today. Fast forward, I think, almost 18 years. You go to the internet, you go to artificial intelligence, you type something, and it'll start making the accounts for you. So mastery is lost.
Yes.
One. All right. Second, as a person, I will be less interested. The youngsters, especially today, we should protect them. Also protect them from the social media because it has its benefits, no doubt, but there are disadvantages. what are some of the bigger disadvantages to the youngsters or as a threat to them is that when they see others being more successful, especially at their age group or a little bit above, without mastering, but just being successful for whatever reason it is, right? Which is not logical. And Islam already mentions this that there will come a time where people without any logic will make money. All right. So when youngsters look at something like this, they lose interest. They say, "Oh, I can start doing food online and I'll make money. I can start doing some acts which are not logical and I'll start making money." All right. So this is something which is diverting the youngsters off track from becoming a master in something.
Yes, yes.
All right. So that's another thing. So one is artificial intelligence that's there, which I feel has its good and bad because you're not using your brain's creativity anymore. You're leaving it to that. Then you have social media, and then you have money. Uh, in today's day and age, people value money more than someone who has knowledge. So someone who has money, you would want to listen more to them than someone who has knowledge. So, oh, he has money, he's successful. That means he knows what he's doing. But someone who has knowledge who might not have money, mashallah, he has knowledge, might say, no, 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 he's wrong because he doesn't have money.
Yeah.
So this is something which a general perception is slowly evolving.
So the value of him being a professional is less than the value of himself. Yeah.
So all these things, there are multiple things. So subhanAllah, if you look at it from the shayateen's perspective, it's a plan so well played over a period of time that today it's like automated process.
Yeah.
He doesn't need to do more. Scary. So I think that's it.
I have a comment on what you said. And again, it might be a formal question, but any addition? No? Sure? Come on, what question we ask?
I'm lost.
Really?
I just came.
Very interesting.
I think he's right because AI and social media can really affect people. For example, like most of the people in my school, when we have an assignment or a homework, they usually use AI to solve it.
Okay.
Yeah, that really affects it because if they kept using AI when they, let's example, they want to be a doctor. Okay, you can't use AI when you are operating on someone. Yeah, because AI can't make accurate assumptions if it was based on like surgery. But if it was an assignment, I think it's okay to use AI because it helps us gather resources and information.
So you mean like don't depend on it, but take it as a supporting one?
Yes, it's
Supporting
like
one.
books.
Okay.
Yeah.
Any addition?
I have one thing to add over there, by the way. Since you mentioned about doctors, subhanAllah, in the field of medicine, they have started this. So they have started testing artificial intelligence on actual surgical procedures. Still testing, not on real humans, but I think they're testing it. So there, the interesting part is, as a human being, if I'm operating based on my experience and mastery of performing past procedures, I will know that, okay, there is 90% that he will not survive, but 10% he'll survive, I will still go ahead. AI, this is where the problem will come. The minute it calculates the probability that 90% not possible, don't waste time, finish. He's gone. Leave him. Next operation.
There's no pity. No rahma. So that's why it might be a supporting function. So first, maybe sorting out kind of tool.
Yes.
But in addition, surely, let me challenge you this way. The concept of there is nothing that serves humans that is 100% evil in such sense. So saying that, what if I said that there is a channel, there is a perspective of seeing this AI, stuff like that, without being specific, but let's call it technology, right? Yeah. So these things, why are we saying that? Maybe these things can contribute to mastery. That's number one. Number two, maybe the concept of mastery is a concept that is also subjective somehow. It has a subjective element. So today's mastery is taking a paper and pen and saying, 1 + 1 is 2, for example, or going to this I don't know, creating this box, with my hands. But tomorrow's mastery is some other image, maybe. But the challenge will be this: should I then be mastering algorithms, for example? This is what the thing I should be. Everyone a doctor should be an expert in AI, a accountant should be expert. Is that what you're talking about, or will effort be something that's less, where I only need a resource, meaning person of knowledge, when he feeds that, when he transfers only the information by his tongue, by talking, and that expert puts it as a translator or interprets it as an algorithm in that technological sense. So, will the concept of mastery transform, or will it be eliminated? That's the question. Can we see these things as being, why not, man? Come on, it's serving us in a way. So, okay, fine. Instead of eliminating the human factor, I will keep it as a preserving tool, like cameras, for example, a preserving tool. So I'm not getting rid of the security guard, but I'm still having cameras just in case. Just saying that, you know what I mean? Unless we support the idea of these things being governed in a way where they are used only with certain permissions, maybe
Restrictions.
yeah, restrictions. That's a word also. Thank you. So that's the first challenge I have. The other thing, the question that I was hoping for, or I'm longing for an answer actually, is there such a thing or role where someone is, we said king today, huh? Let us take the form of a king as an example. Is a king a master on something? Meaning that if someone wants to distinguish himself from performing in such things, I don't want to be the person who performs or executes. I'm a good, what will that X factor be? He's a good what? He's a good what? Okay, let me put it in another sense. Person who's a good speaker. A good speaker might be someone, maybe the further distance he can reach to is being someone who's influential. For example, and then again, does this also assumes mastery? Maybe he's a master in a language. Maybe he's a master in a technique. He has a set of techniques that he masters, for example. Techniques in persuasion. He's a good persuader, maybe. So you need that person too, by the way. It's like, for example, the people who heal by the Qur'an. What do? Yes, there is an element of faith in it, but he uses the verses in the Qur'an to relate. That's the utilization over there. He utilizes, let me say, for example, let me take someone who's depressed, for example. So if I read, for example, وَالضُّحَى وَاللَّيْلِ إِذَا سَجَى مَا وَدَّعَكَ رَبُّكَ وَمَا قَلَى. Allah is still with you. I'm giving you these good tidings. Of course, there's an element of faith, 100%, but also there's an element of optimism and positive energy. Yeah. So I'm using words. Is this personality is he any distinct from the concept of mastery? Is he or not? What do you think? No? There's still mastery there.
Has to be.
Has to be, huh? So there's no such thing as I'm a master of everything, or I have a bit of everything. Then you'll be a good master. You'll be a good manager, maybe.
I think people are getting more and more confused in today's day and age, especially with, for example, you see many people, when I see a lot of CVs, right? So someone's doing one thing, suddenly he moves to something else, suddenly moves to something else. Oh, this is doing good now, so I'm moving into this, for example. So the concept of mastering something, people are not believing in it.
Why do you think?
Money. People are running behind money. That's one reason.
Okay. Let me say this. You can stop if you want. You can stop if you want. It's okay. It's an open discussion. If we say, if we take that, if we take your interpretation of what's happening in reality or in something, and see that I'm not gonna go against your interpretation and the way you read this event, but I'm gonna try to take another polar which says, all right, can we have an additional line. How can I explain this? All right. Let me tell you about this. For example, we have today something called influencers. It's like a job now. Okay. I don't know what was there in the past, but did you often hear this in the past? Have you opened a book? Okay, fine. Now, someone might criticize this as a profession. Someone might do that. And someone say, why? Listen, why go against the creativity of humans? Why not govern it? Let's extract that and turn it into a new job. Maybe it's an extension of an existing thing. You understand me? It might be an extension of an existing thing. Why not utilize that from, for example, people's preferences, for example, right? And we can create laws and stuff like that. Now, I'm assuming that, okay, let's keep Abdul Hafiz's opinion and add another line just to keep the balance in society and say, listen, if people are jumping from job to job, for example, and they're running after money or whatever it is, can I create a name or an attribute? Maybe there is something that's consistent that he's doing. It might be very niche and subtle, like you told me this word, but it's something very thin. There's a thin kind of image there that's consistent. That's the thing that he's mastering, and that's the reason why he's changing his job often. You might argue with me, by the way. You might say, no, it might be because of طمع. Yani he has greed. Maybe you might be right, by the way. Maybe that's not wrong. But let us open a chance to explore. If we explore now, I'll post that interpretation. I'll put it there. I'll say, I'm not going to say it's right or wrong. It exists. It exists because you perceive it like this. Maybe some other people perceive it like this. Maybe it's objectively right. I don't know. We will call this someone who's inconsistent, not mastering anything. Is spontaneous, random. All right? That's number one. Okay. Let us assume that there's another character. Let it be me, for example. And this person will no. It's okay. If you call it is running after money, I'm going to call it something else. What would that something else be?
Someone who's no, it is actually does make sense, of course, because you will have a certain type of people who will venture into what is the need of the moment or what is successful in the market right now. So, for example, if when tax was implemented over here, a lot of people ran into tax.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm doing VAT.
That's a new thing.
It's a new thing.
Yeah.
Then now the real estate market is going up, so a lot of those people run into brokerage.
Yes.
I got my real estate license, now I'm a broker.
Yeah.
So one thin line might be that, okay, fine, someone, money being aside, who just wants to work. So that's one thing, that is the effort.
Yeah.
So it might not be anything specific related to one industry. It's across. And across is what someone who puts in, let's say, 8 to 10 hours of time with full, what do you call? In a right manner.
Commitment, let me see.
Huh?
Right, commitment?
Commitment, but in a right manner, with the right heart. Not cheating, for example. So that is something which can be there along the different lines.
I will tell you something that's very interesting. Might sound funny, by the way. Okay, I have two concepts. One of them is a funny. Okay, might sound funny. I'm afraid that it's something that might be respectful, but I'm gonna say that you might think it's funny. It will sound like that maybe. Another concept that's a bit deep, and I'm sorry for being deep. That's just how I act. Okay, it's just part of that's my personality. I'm sorry for that. All right. Can someone master enjoyment? So he's a master in enjoying something. When he goes to a restaurant, for example, he knows what to order in order just to have that excitement in him. You understand me? So this person might be taking his job as an enjoyment. He might be enjoying the journey, the trip itself. That I'm moving from one job like a roller coaster, from one job to one job. It just feels good, that rush of being felt accepted I'm being noticeable, and I have a market. You understand me? So it's a concept that's strange, but
I think anyone working something that he loves, working on something that he loves
Yeah.
or is passionate about, is enjoying it automatically.
what about luck? What about people noticing a trend? For example, you say, this is the logic. Why am I working? Why am I being professional? I'm being professional because I want to make a living. All right, fine. Why does it have to be professional? Wallahi, because I want to preserve my identity and to be consistent, because with consistency in one field comes improvement. Or what else I'm going to compare myself to in order to know that I'm improving in something. Meaning that if I'm an accounting, so absolutely accounting 101, 102, 103, I went to this auditing firm, to this whatever. Now I have a kind of I have a something that's firm, which I'm comparing myself into it. So I started here, and I'm here now. You know, I have a scale that I compare. I have a measurement scale. While I'm jumping from job to another job, what am I comparing my improvement to? You understand me? What's the thing that's consistent and ground and firm that I'm comparing my improvement to? That's one thing we need to discuss. Now, he might say that, okay, if you see profession is the thing that's static and everything else is dynamic, well, how about this? I will take the wealth, the money, that concept is firm for me, and everything else is dynamic. And I'm going to take it as a luck. So I'll notice what's happening now, this date, and I'm going to do it right now because end of the day, it's all about preserving wealth. Maybe. But here's the thing. Very interesting question or dialogue that happened between me and some. Is it okay to mention a profession here? I don't know. If I mention the profession without, of course, I'm going to mention the institution. But I don't know if it's okay. All right, I'm not going to mention it just to be protective. And there's a profession that has to do with techniques more than having deep professional knowledge. So it's a set of skill and techniques that you know about and you might practice, and then you can use them, you know, for negotiating certain topics and stuff like that. So there is a lady who was part of the group, or you know, the crew who were teaching this in the course. So I asked her, I said, listen, if you learn this, is it enough without having a profession? What she said is this: it's going to be something. She did this also. It's weak. It's weak. So maybe this person is actually, it's a weakness to be jumping from a job. He's taking a big risk. So it's weak inherently. It's an inherent weak way of improving yourself. And maybe because he's weak, maybe Allah compensated him with luck. Maybe. And maybe he has I'm not going to call it insecurity, but maybe the confidence that someone who's a professional is more than the confidence that this person. So here's the thing. What do we do with people who are like that? Now, let me tell you my theory. I have the concept of time, which is after and before. Like someone who does a sin, before doing the sin, you train him not to do it. So you teach him skills and knowledge that makes him avoid the sin. But after falling into the sin, what do? You order him with one thing only. Please repent. You should repent. Because I'm not going to support you for the sin, but I'm supporting your emotional state to get you out of the sin. So I'll tell you this, with you confronting yourself and saying that astaghfirullah, this is something haram, now I'm going to tell you, listen, what happened to you is khair. If you say astaghfirullah and you go back. So we'll utilize the sin that happened to you, and I'll try to turn it to wisdom into your case. You understand me? So same thing. I'm not saying this guy's sinful, but I'm saying he's in a weak position where if he slipped with before him being like that, I warn him, listen, don't be spontaneous like that. Don't let your greed overwhelm you. Master something. But if he has done it, now, stop. How can I turn your, quick This quick can changes that you have, how can I turn that into something that's good to you? You understand me? So maybe the expertise that he had is he's good in dealing with people themselves. There are people, subhanAllah, who can just me seeing Uday and his face, I know what will make Uday happy. I know what kind of personality he is, for example. So, okay, wait a minute. This person, whether he's in customer service or HR, it's the same thing. You understand me? Maybe he can be a good da'iyah, by the way. I can give this person a message. He's a good ambassador. You understand me? He has this ambassador kind of personality. See? So I can utilize him, but these people need something. They need some sort of sovereignty. They need that. They need to be under a strong, because they're weak, might be weak, but without being a strong governing, let me say, leader, maybe, they need a leader with them, they're weak because they did not master one thing. They need another type of genre of job, which is, for example, being loyal to a person. Why? This person tells them, go there, go here, because he's good in dealing with people. Give him any message, he will master the techniques that preserve the message, and he knows what people's flavor are. So, like a da'iyah, for example, like a merchant, like a trader also, like an open trader, give him any item, then all he has to do is find the right people, exactly, and speak the right language, and be a good influencer. So he has the character, the attributes. The attributes are mastered well. Now you need to put content into it. He has weakness in the content. The content might be interchangeable in that sense. Now, whatever I'm saying right now, you might say, but does this contradict the concept of mastery, or does it not? Or do we need a balance between the two? We need a balance between the two. So we need professionals that are indulged with the job itself. So in terms of accounting, so I need the person, of course, they won't be maybe a little, minimal amount. Maybe you won't have two opposing polars. Like they say, there is no, I don't know if this is true, correct me if I'm wrong. Is there such a thing where it's, a purely socialist market and a purely free market, 100%? They say there's a mix. There's a bit of something like that. That's 100% pure, maybe in a theoretical sense. Maybe. But I'm saying same thing. Maybe even a professional, end of the day, he's not a robot, but he leans toward the professional job more, and attain and mastering and knowing the formulas and the knowledge that has to think itself. Other person might have the archetype of the knowledge. I just need to know that there is debit and credit and expense and liability. That's why. What's the reason? The reason is that I'm dealing with people more often, not with objective, not with objects and papers and pens. That's why I only need the archetype. I'm a good negotiator. For example, you understand me? So he's in the other world. Then you need someone who's in the middle. I think this is where we're talking. The person who's in the middle has to have good intention. You know why? Because some people, maybe, what makes them jump from somewhere to another, you might tell me it's fine, nothing wrong with it, but it might be something that, can I say it's vulnerable? But what if someone says to himself, I need archetypes, because I want the position leading. Does it sound right? Do you think that, is this greedy? Is it depending on his intention? Or is it okay if you know yourself? Or are you going to say, yeah, but 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, not all of you guys. You understand me? We need also experts in the society. Something like that. So maybe the person in the middle needs to be someone that guides the mediator. He's the person who's keeping things balanced. That do we have enough number there? Do we have enough? We don't want all people to be leaders here. We don't want all people to be. Understand me? So this is maybe the line that's missing. This is what I personally, this is the idea I'm advocating for. In the business field, they call the auditors the third line of defense. They call them like that. So this third line of defense may not be a line that's authoritative, by the way. It's not an authoritative line of business, by the way. Some people mix up things, by the way. He's part of the business. He's not a, you know what I mean, militant or something, or someone who acts like a police. No, he's not. He's some kind of, maybe it's a role that depends on another thing. And it takes its flavor depending on the situation. But anyways, this third line of defense, let me say, it helps mediates between this line here and this line here. Maybe this is the thing that needs to be activated more in order for societies to be balanced. So what do you call that, by the way? And does this function? It's a static function that's always have been there, but its name changes from time to time. So today it's called audit. 20 years ago, or 100 years ago, it was called something else. I don't know. So this is what I think. And just to give you this nice insight, when you want to think of something outside, think of your own nafs and body, how it's functioning. So you have, for example, you have a right hand and a left hand. You have a right brain, they say, and a left brain. Right. You observe. Now, I don't have an answer for this. I'm not a doctor, but here's where Sunnah, here's where Allah's creation are distinct in a way, but are connected in a way that there's a certain wisdom that's always consistent. For example, you need a leader in the company, or a president or a CEO. You need a head. Then this head needs a right hand, and it needs a left hand maybe. It needs legs, people who are executing the functions. You need a heart in your company. You need a person who people can lean towards when there's a problem, by the way, because not everything is going to be systematic. You need someone who has compassion with people. So this body of yours speaks to you to the language that should be in the society and company. So what is the part of us that keeps things in a balanced state? That's the question. Maybe this will give us an answer on what should be done in order to protect professions, by the way, because we need to protect professions in a sense, and we need also leaders who we give them set of skills, set of archetypes, archetypical knowledge, and we give them a message, by the way. We give them a message and say, use these various knowledge you have and become a leader and become a preacher maybe for someone or some message or some leader that you like to love to follow, whatever it is. So this third line, where does it come from? Where does it come from? And what is it, by the way? And I'm going to end this with a nice little quote I heard from one of the life coaches. He said that they say that the thin line between intelligence and madness. There's a thin line between intelligence and madness. What is that thin line? What is that thin line? I don't know. But end of the day, I just wanted to reach out to you guys from I hope to be accepted as a slave for Allah and all of us, inshallah, from someone who wishes to be a slave to Him only, subhanahu wa ta'ala, Yusuf, to society, to whoever is listening, is that do not distinct faith, iman, from your jobs and your professions. Take it as an element, as an extension, as a functionality, as a byproduct, as a product of your iman. Because you're a person who has faith, because you have iman in you, because you believe Allah is watching you while you're working, you are choosing a job that you love and you are eager to be professional at this job. And you are eager also, you like to master your salah and your siyam, you're eager also to master the professions that are between your hands because you want to please your Lord with that profession too. Inna Allah yuhibbu idha amila ahadukum amalan an yadkhula. Allah loves that if one amongst you performs a job that he masters it May Allah Azza wa Jal give us the blessing of mastering our jobs. Inshallah, and forgive us for our sins. Alhamdulillah. Sallallahu alaihi wa sallam.